This is Barbara Clouser once again with signs, miracles, and wonders. Now please, don't touch that dial. Stay with me for a while, as I have another story to tell. It's a true story. It's entitled Grandma. Let's begin. It was the day before Christmas, and I had a feeling of depression that filled me up and weighed me down like an old wet army blanket. Nothing I seemed to do could shake this feeling that had come over me. As I was walking down the street, entering the shopping mall in our small town, I knew there were many little things that I needed to tie up, a few presents and gifts. Then my shopping would be completed. I couldn't put my finger on what was wrong, but I felt like I was missing something. And then, suddenly, without warning, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her, a woman that looked just like my grandmother. My grandmother, who had passed away over 30 years ago. Why, my favorite grandmother. Suddenly my heart skipped a beat, and I began to go in the direction that I thought I saw her turning. When I reached the corner, I saw the back of this woman. She was walking leisurely and casually, stopping and looking in the windows. Her reflection in the glass showed me a smile of contentment on her sweet, dear face. I followed her like a detective, but at a respectable distance, and my heart began to beat a little faster. She moved and held her head exactly the way my grandma did. She wore the same type of clothing that my grandma wore, and even her hairstyle was the same. As I gazed at her profile, the light shone on her silver spectacles. They were just like the ones my grandma had worn. I continued to follow her, feeling a little foolish. But there was something about her that drew me towards her. She entered a shop where children's toys were, and she picked up a big teddy bear, gave it a squeeze, and then a pat, then placed it back on the shelf with a twinkle in her eye. She then came to a big old-fashioned rocking horse. She touched the head of that horse, and it began to rock back and forth from her gentle touch. Then she continued exploring. She picked up a book called The Gingerbread Man. Oh, my heart skipped a beat once again. That was my very favorite story when I was a child. You know the one that I mean. Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. She took that book and placed it under her arm. She went to the counter, and the long line seemed to magically disappear right before my very eyes. The people standing in the line said to her, "Go ahead, go to the head of the line, since you have only one little gift to purchase." She protested, "Oh, no, that's all right." But everyone insisted that she go to the head of the line, and so she did. She placed the book on the counter and opened up her black pocketbook. It was just like the one my grandma used to have many years ago. She opened up her coin purse, black with a silver trim. You guessed it, just like the one my grandma had many years ago. She took out her money, and it was folded so very neatly, just the way my grandma used to fold her money. Then she turned her coin purse over into her hand very carefully, and she began to count out the change, the exact change, just the way my grandma used to do, so many, many years ago. The girl at the counter gave her a big smile, packaged up her book, and thanked her and wished her a Merry Christmas. The woman smiled at everyone, and she walked toward the back of the store, to the stairs right next to the elevator. I was becoming quite embarrassed by this time, but nothing could keep me from her, even though I was worried she might call the police to say I was stalking her. I seemed to have no choice, so I followed cautiously where she couldn't see me, at a safe distance. The door to the stairway closed, and I began to run a little faster, so I wouldn't lose track of her. When I reached the stairs, I opened the door that went down to the parking lot. I could hear her footsteps. It was the strangest thing ever, hearing her footsteps. And the thought of my grandmother flowed through me in such a remembrance that my body and my mind and my heart and my spirit ached with longing for her all over again. Then, suddenly, I heard silence, and I could not hear her footsteps any longer, and I hastened mine. I began running faster and faster. I opened the door at the bottom of the stairs. I looked to my right, but she was not there. I looked to my left, and she wasn't there either. Then I looked straight ahead, and the funniest thing happened. She just seemed to vanish into nowhere. There were people all over the place, but I couldn't find her. She seemed to have been lost in the crowd. I began running up and down the street like a woman possessed. I ran into the bakery, but she was not there. I ran into the bookstore, and I didn't find her there. I ran into the toy shop, quite out of breath, and she was not there either. And I continued to run faster and faster. I couldn't find her anywhere. And then I began to cry, almost uncontrollably. Oh, I was so embarrassed, but I couldn't help myself. I felt I had lost my grandma all over again. I was quite unconsolable, and I wearily turned around and went back to the mall, where my car was parked. I finally found my vehicle. I opened the door, climbed in, and I threw my body across the front seat, and I sobbed, thinking of my dearest grandmother. I finally found my way home, but I could not shake the despondency that I was feeling. When I walked into my home, I noticed that my daughter and my grandchildren were waiting for me. "Grandma, Grandma," my children, they squealed with delight. "You're finally home. Do you have any presents that we need to bring into the house?" And I smiled and sadly shook my head no. And then it dawned on me, I hadn't completed the last-minute shopping. I opened my purse and looked at my list. There wasn't much on it. A gold thimble that I wanted to buy for my godmother. A lace handkerchief for the lady that lived down the lane. And one other thing, a book of lovely little poems that I wanted to buy for my secretary. I looked at the time and realized I was in serious trouble, as all the stores would be closing any moment. I had no way of getting back there on time to buy these personal gifts, and I thought to myself, oh no, I guess I will just have to give money. I'd rather make it personalized, but sometimes we just can't get away from giving a monetary gift, can we, dearest ones? Especially in these instances, and these particular people, I knew they would have enjoyed a special touch personally from me. Now I began to sigh with resignation, and I went into the waiting arms of my children, and they began to comfort me the best way they knew how. After the children left, I went to bed, and all I could see was my grandmother walking through that store, and how I could not find her anywhere. I began to fall into a fitful, worrisome, troubled sleep. The next morning as I awoke, I could smell the aroma of coffee in the air as my husband was up before me. He came into my room, kissed me on the forehead, and said, "Honey, hope you're feeling better than yesterday. Why don't you come out and we'll open our gifts together before we go to see the children?" I sat before the Christmas tree, and he handed me a big package tied neatly with a gorgeous silver bow. I opened it up, and to my delight it was a warm coat, something that I have been wanting for the longest time. Oh, I put my arms around him and kissed him and thanked him so much. Then I gave him his package, and he began to tear it apart. He beamed with delight, as I had given him a brand-new graphite driver. My husband loves golf, and he began trying it out right in the middle of the front room. I smiled and said, "Honey, at least take the club and yourself outside to practice." And he did. The Christmas tree was all aglow. All the packages that had been under the tree were already removed and packed, waiting in the back of the car, to be taken to my children and grandchildren's home. As I moved closer to the tree, something caught my eye. I saw that underneath there were 3 packages, partly wrapped, and I thought, "That's strange. Maybe Bob forgot to finish these for me." I went a little closer, and I opened up the first box, and I saw a gold thimble. And in the second box was a beautiful little book of poems that I wanted to buy for my secretary. And in the third box was the book, my favorite book in the whole wide world, The Gingerbread Man. Why, my heart began to skip a beat, and I began to look around the room. And then I saw her, my grandmother, standing by the fireplace. Why, she was smiling at me. She was wearing her black dress and shoes, her white apron, and her hair was pulled back in a bun. And I could hear her thoughts in my mind, even though she spoke not a word from her lips. And she said, "Be not sad that we had to part, for I am with the Father, and I have you tucked deep inside my heart." And then she disappeared right before my very eyes, and I never, ever saw her again. And then, suddenly, without warning, my alarm went off, and it woke me up from this most beautiful, magnificent dream. Oh, but her memory lives on in the deepest fiber of my being. I love you so, Grandma, and I miss you so very, very much. This, my precious saints, is Barbara Clouser.